Welcome to NextGen Timber, where modern forestry is not just about cutting trees anymore. If you want real logging action, smart forestry machines, close calls, and heavy timber work pushed to the limit, subscribe now and stay with the NextGen Timber crew. The first moment already tells you what kind of episode this is. That deep cracking sound is the warning every logger understands immediately. It is the sound of stored pressure starting to release. The problem is, it does not always release in the direction people expect. One wrong read, one weak assumption, one bad angle, and the entire tree can change the plan in a second. Watch this closely, because this is exactly what separates real tree work from guessing. Cutting timber is not just pushing a chainsaw through wood. It is reading pressure inside the trunk, checking the lean, knowing where the weight wants to go, and making sure there is an escape route before the saw ever bites. Miss any of that, and you are no longer controlling the job. You are just trying to survive the reaction. Then comes a bad calculation. A worker cuts high on a tree, expecting the trunk to fall cleanly, but the angle is slightly wrong. That is all it takes. The tree gains speed, drops toward the house, and the roof takes the hit. In seconds, a simple cutting job becomes property damage. In another operation, a worker stands on top of a massive log, guiding the chainsaw down through dense timber. It looks controlled, but it is still risky. He has to keep his balance on the trunk while the saw cuts deep and sawdust sprays below. Another worker watches, a loader waits nearby, and every move has to stay coordinated. The log is slowly divided into sections, but the whole process depends on calm hands and clean timing. That is the part most people do not understand. You do not command a tree. You influence it. You guide it as much as you can. But if the pressure inside the wood decides to push back, the tree will remind you who has the weight advantage. Then the scene moves into mud, water, and unstable ground. Trucks push forward through current and soft terrain, every tire fighting for grip. The driver has to keep adjusting constantly, balancing throttle, steering, and momentum. Now the John Deere G3M steps in and changes the mood. No panic, no wasted motion, just grip and pull. Heavy timber drags through rough ground while the machine keeps working like it was built for exactly this punishment. That is why equipment like this earns trust in the woods. It does not complain. It performs. On the roadside, a loader places long logs onto a truck one by one, building a stable stack for transport. Once loaded, the truck pulls away with timber stretching behind it. The job looks smooth, but every turn is a test. Dirt turns to pavement, speed increases, and the load still has to stay tight. That is controlled transport under pressure. That closes the first run. Bad cuts, smart recoveries, heavy machines, and lessons being written in real time. But in timber work, the next problem is never far away. Then comes the kind of moment that makes you question the decision before the accident even happens. A log truck loses balance, and once that load starts moving, it does not wait for anyone. Timber drops hard, weight shifts fast, and the situation turns dangerous immediately. You look at it and wonder how it got that far, but that is logging. The machines take over again as a grinder starts eating through piles of wood. Boards disappear into the intake, shredded output pours out, and the whole process moves with brutal speed. This is NextGen Timber at full pace. Raw material in, usable output out, no hesitation in between. Then someone tries to get creative, using extreme heat instead of normal tools. It looks dramatic, but the wood barely reacts. That is the lesson. Timber is tougher than people think, and making a job more complicated does not always make it smarter or safer. Then the real surprise hits. A trunk that looks finished suddenly kicks upright during the cut. No warning, no pause, just movement. What looked routine becomes chaos in a heartbeat. Tension does not disappear just because the saw stops. It stays trapped until something releases it. If you want more moments like this, the failures, the recoveries, the machines, and the real truth behind logging, subscribe to NextGen Timber and stay with us. Then comes controlled power at another level. A massive seeder is handled by a hydraulic system that locks in, lifts clean, and moves the timber with confidence. The grapple holds, the crane does the heavy work, And the Morris trucking setup turns what used to take a full crew into a cleaner, faster operation. This is where raw strength meets modern forestry control. But not every lift goes clean. A crane begins raising a load, then the balance shifts. The outriggers fail to hold the truck steady, and the entire setup tilts before dropping. Then another fall goes wrong. A tree drops faster than expected, slips off its intended path, and crashes between parked cars, clipping one on the way down. A loaded logging truck then moves carefully into position, timber stacked high, in every shift carrying risk. The driver inches forward, aligning with another trailer. No sudden moves, no careless steering. When a load is that heavy, precision is not optional. Then a tree falls dangerously close to live power lines. Somehow, there are no sparks and no major damage. That is luck, not a method. A few inches different, and that quiet outcome could have turned into a serious emergency. An excavator leans into a standing tree, pushing with steady force. The base starts to split, the fibers stretch, and the trunk begins to give. But the fall shifts slightly offline, and suddenly the operator has to react fast. What started as a controlled push becomes a tight, risky moment where inches matter. A compact loader pushes against another tree near nearby structures. At first, it looks simple. Then the trunk leans closer than expected, and the whole scene becomes tense. Small machine, big tree, tight space, not a combination that leaves much room for error. Then everything slows down. Horses step in, calm and steady. No engine noise, no hydraulics, no shouting. Just controlled strength and old-school timber work. It is a reminder that forestry is not always about bigger machines. Sometimes the cleanest method is the quietest one. Then we return to brute force. An excavator clamps onto a stubborn stump. the claw biting deep into solid wood. Pressure builds, fibers crack, roots snap free, and soil breaks apart. Each movement reduces the stump from a rooted structure into debris. That is, hydraulic power finishing what nature started. Next comes a coordinated cut. A worker shapes the notch while a pickup applies rope tension. The pull builds gradually as the cut deepens. No sudden jerks, no wild movement. Both actions work together. The trunk starts leaning, the cutter steps back, and the rope guides the fall away from structures. That is what controlled teamwork looks like. Then nature interrupts with violence. Lightning strikes a tree and tears it apart from the inside. Fragments fly across the road, and in seconds, something solid becomes scattered debris. Then comes the classic call, timber. But the tree hesitates, shifts, and refuses to commit cleanly. That pause is uncomfortable because everyone knows the tree is moving, but nobody fully knows how it will finish. A sudden shift pushes a tree section back toward a ladder. The worker loses footing and falls. One simple cut becomes an accident in seconds. That is why ladders and heavy branches are such a dangerous mix. Then the road takes over. This route does not forgive mistakes. Every steering input matters. These drivers are not just moving timber. They are managing risk with every turn, every correction, and every inch of road. Finally, a wheel loader lifts a full bundle of logs high into the air. The weight shifts slightly as the machine moves across uneven ground. Every motion has to stay slow and controlled. At that height, a mistake does not just drop the load, it can take the whole machine with it. That is NextGen Timber, real forestry, modern machines, heavy timber, smart recovery, dangerous mistakes, and no fake safety net. Subscribe now if you want more logging machines, close calls, timber hauling, controlled cutting, and raw work from the edge of the forest. Out here, steel can help, skill can guide, but gravity always has the final say.